Welcome to Power Hour, where the editors of Powersports Business interview the movers and shakers of the industry. This episode is brought to you by Synchrony.
Okay, everybody, it's Brendan Baker with Powersports Business, and we've got two great guests today on the Power Hour. We've got Courtney Bernhard with Performance Brokerage Services and George Chaconis, who you guys may know. These people have been around a lot of shows and in a lot of dealerships over the years. But this year, we're going to talk about kind of like what's the state of the market right now, especially on the M&A side. You know, what's going on, because it seems like at least from the outside point of view, we've seen a little bit of a slowdown. Maybe it's just summer, I don't know. But, you know, we're seeing a few dealers changing hands. We're seeing some closing down. We've seen, you know, it seems like a lot more Harley dealers are involved. What do you guys see out there?
Thank you, Brendan, for the introduction. It's good to be back with you and my partner, Courtney. I think just going back to the beginning of the year, the first quarter was very slow, and even the second was a little bit better. We're seeing activity pick up. We have had, a significant amount of activity, but I've never seen more sellers in 25 years of doing this, and not as many buyers have we seen for years. So there's a huge delta. We also, our firm does M&A in the automotive industry, and there's more buyers than sellers I've ever seen. So it's just it's
on the automotive side.
It's completely opposite. It just I don't get it. But I think, coming out of COVID and, everybody got kind of complacent, and we warned everybody about, expenses and things normalizing, and then the OEMs, overproducing and putting too much inventory out there, especially I think Harley Davidson is, in the fourth quarter of last year, 2024, but, we are seeing some confidence slowly. We just closed on a Harley Davidson dealership in Carroll, Iowa. We've got multiple other buy-sells in the process, from either early negotiations, letters of intent, to we've got multiple multi-line and Harley Davidson asset purchase agreement, real estate purchase agreements at the manufacturers for approval. Things are slowing down. I think we're very, I'd say, cautiously optimistic about, the new CEO announced for Harley Davidson, which is exciting. Right. I think, it was a good article about him buying his first bike there at Maverick Harley Davidson, friends of mine down in Dallas. Pretty exciting.
I didn't see that one. I'll have to.
It was all over social media, which I'm not a big social media guy, but maybe I should be. But so we're excited. We think, corporately, we believe that activity will pick up. Hopefully, we'll have a rate cut in September. Part of the problem is lenders nervous about the state of the industry and the slowdown. But
are you thinking buyers, from what I'm seeing in the reports, are that people are holding on, the middle class, lower, and again, Gen Z's motorcycle buyers and they're not doing so well. They're holding on to they're holding things tight right now. The upper class, though, they're spending and they're propping up a lot from what I understand. And I do think that, some of that is happening in some of the upper ends of when you see like some of the big Harley, purchases with the touring end, and some of the UTV, the crazy $50,000 UTVs going out there. But, I think buyers are still a little bit leery, but pre-owned is solid.
I'm going to let Courtney kind of touch about all these so-called closures, and let's talk about consolidation. That was the other thing, like the transaction that we helped facilitate in St. Louis, Missouri recently. Yeah. That's important to understand, because I think there's a lot of communication, understanding about what's really going on with the consolidation that continues and closures.
Yeah. And I kind of want to back it up to the end of 2024. I don't think it's unusual, and I think George would agree that you see a little bit of hesitancy in an election year. For people, kind of sitting on the sidelines. It's very contentious. Everybody's, wondering what's going on.
Right.
I think there was a lot of hope with the change of the administration. It got a little sideways when, the tariffs were announced. So I think there was, a lot that happened within, the end of the year and even, first and second quarter, just, still trying to figure it all out.
Chaos, I think. Yeah.
I think you compile that along with, we're now starting to see, a flood of the bikes that were purchased at the top of the market through COVID. People are buried in, these bikes. And so, the slowing of, the newer units or units in general, when you try to go trade it in, it's, completely upside down.
Right.
So I think it's just been a perfect storm the last 6 months, which hasn't helped. Again, compiling that with, the expense structure still, being up there, margins being compressed. Again, the aging, we talk about all the time, the aging rider. I was talking to a couple of metric dealers and they said, we're seeing more of these touring bikes come in and getting traded in on side-by-sides.
Right. With age comes the cage, as they always say.
Yeah, so I think there's just a perfect storm, and I think we're just again trying to right side the ship coming out of COVID, and the dealers that paid attention, watched, their inventory. I mean, it's amazing to me when I do the numbers. Before I never really paid attention to what was sitting new inventory on dealers' books. And now one of the first things that I do on evaluation is I go to their website to see how many new units are sitting on there. And I like to call them toddlers. I'm seeing new units from 2023 sitting there, and that's terrifying.
Right.
It can make a big difference in, negotiations, when we're doing these buy sells. And so I think there was the dealers that paid attention, like really paid attention to their expense structures, their personnel, and moving those units off to keep the flooring, in check, are the ones that are still doing okay. And by okay, I mean, they'll be lucky to break even.
Right.
They have been able to break even, as opposed to the ones that were, maybe what I call in the COVID burnout, that took a year off thinking, I'm just going to sail away and realize, man, shouldn't have done that. And now they're coming back into an absolute mess of a dealership, and, they're in the red. And, again, that's why we're seeing more sales and maybe some of the closures. I think the publications, unfortunately, announce these,
not ours, but no.
announce these, closures, but there's no context behind, some of the reasons why they're closing, and the public perception. You can read the comments, in social media. I mean, it's negative and it's depressing. And, again, it goes back to, there are still some over dealered areas where it doesn't make sense to have so many rooftops, in one area, rural stores that are a bit, harder. And I think the biggest thing that we're looking at right now is the values of real estate. We just did a podcast with a CPA group, and we've been talking about it over and over again. And I know you brought up earlier when we were talking about, these Taj Mahal Harley Davidson dealerships, where the math just doesn't math. And how do we get past that? And I think the dealers that have been around a long time and have equity in their real estate, and we can get, creative with maybe a reduction in the real estate or, a favorable lease, we can make those work. But there are just some that just, the math doesn't math.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think if, some of them that have moved, and I think, I know Harley, for one, they wanted dealer, you need to get into this high visibility spot that's going to cost a fortune, build all this. And I'm not just picking on Harley, others do it too. And, it then costs a fortune, but then when that dips and you're not, it just, the math does not math at all. It's and especially now, I mean, I think with all the costs of everything going up, and a lot of real estate in certain areas is dipping, like you're looking at Florida with having some of the real estate issues, especially with retail being tough, so you're upside down, I guess, but it's, I do think that there's still hope at the end of the rainbow. I mean, you guys seem like is something you're seeing out there, that there's still, I do think that a lot of the changeover too is like we were talking about ageism, the people getting out of motorcycling, but a lot of the owners are getting to the retirement age. Like they're just like, well, I've had my run, maybe now's the time, where are they going to go out on the high, or they can look at it now and go, well, maybe now's the time to do it, so I think we've seen a number of those, and we're not seeing as many. I don't know if we're seeing as many, but like car dealers were buying up, a few of these Harley dealers and other power sports dealerships, but I don't know if we're seeing as much of that now. Maybe that'll happen, but I think that when rates do finally come down, there might be a mad rush. As a matter of fact, I was looking at, like, I also look at like real estate, a lot of real estate rates and information, like some of when the prime rate went down, or your mortgage rates went down like a quarter point or whatever, people were rushing to refi, so it's just a matter of, if we get that point right, but how low do we need to go to get, we're not going to be back to the, 0% time, not for a while anyway. So.
And I think that speaks again especially with the motor company. And we only talk about the motor company because, they've been under rapid fire for
right.
A long time for so many different, things. And I think with them, announcing a bike that's coming, under $10,000, when you talk to dealers and, they're saying that they can't even get their top tier, 800 credit score people below, 10 to 11% interest rate. How can you even attract a new rider that has little to no credit, that wants to get on a bike, but the bike's expensive, the interest rate's astronomical? Again, I think it's not that there's not any riders out there. I just think right now, because of the economics of credit,
right,
it's also prohibiting those people from coming in.
And, over the years, Powersports has slowly moved itself out of the cash only. Used to be you could go in and buy it for pretty cheap, or, you didn't have to finance, and now it's like all about these big purchases, and it's gotten more difficult. Now, I know Harley, they're sold off a portion of their financing arm, which will give them a cash injection, but I don't know, supposedly they're still owning a lot of that, and that's a big part of their business. But yeah, I mean, I think once rates and stuff come down, it'll be a different, because like I said, I was at the Vintage Motorcycle Days, and it was probably one of the biggest events I've been to in a long time, probably the biggest vintage days I've been to. And I've been to several. And to me, it just shows there's so much interest in motorcycling and in power sports. That's not going away. It's how people are buying what people are buying right now. And that part is what we're more concerned about. But, I think that we're like anything, even in the 2000, you get through it. There's ones that are going to do it right, that are going to be very much like holding close to watching their finances and paying attention, not having too much on their floor plan, but, and the name of the game is you still got to sell bikes, to make everything go around. Right. So.
And talking about not only the closures that you're reading about, but more the consolidation, I think, is going to continue to happen both in metric and in Harley Davidson. For example, in St. Louis, Missouri, Evan Schipper, who we've helped buy and sell multiple dealerships, owned a store, and then just not far in St. Louis, Gateway Harley Davidson, that dealer raised his hand and we bought that store and then consolidating that market. So we're going to continue seeing that also in Metric and Powersports, where you've got, somebody who owns Yamaha, Kawasaki, and you get the big guy down the street, and we're seeing those kind of like how Ride Now built their business by consolidating these mom and pops under one roof. So that's a good thing, really, for the consumer and for the dealer. So we're going to see more of that. We're working on some projects right now that are pretty high profile that we can't talk about.
Oh, okay.
But we hope to announce soon.
But soon, hopefully.
The teaser. Tune back for more.
Stay tuned for the next episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're look, it's much harder putting deals together than ever before, and just getting more desperate calls from aging dealers with no succession plan or health issues or just ready to throw the towel in, and we'll advise them, whether or not it's worth going to market or just closing and trying to get Harley or one of the other OEMs to chip in to close and get back as much as they can on the parts and inventory and sell the real estate for, different use.
Right.
So that's kind of what
we're
working
through. On the other hand, you've got, we've got, and I'm interviewing, I haven't got the interview yet, but we're setting it up. But Charlie Knoll, he's Southeast Michigan BMW dealer that building a new place. So it was an old, I guess it was like an old bar, restaurant. Anyway, it's in a cool area that they're gonna
the $6 million
$6 million
expansion or what? Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
we're gonna find out more about that. But I think that there's those good stories out there. So
I know we just had an automotive dealer, the Dimmick Group, in our backyard. They just announced that they're opening a Metric store just about an hour and change north of Tampa. So again, there's still hope, there's still belief. Like, we know Powersports isn't going anywhere. This is just some really rough waters, and I think it becomes really tough, especially on our side, when get really personal with these dealers, right? This isn't a short process. This isn't a real estate wheel. Right. Where I'm like, so let's sign up your house, stick a post in, and we'll go to sale. We work, George's been in this a long time, and I've been here 6 years now, and we get really personal. We have long time relationships. I mean, we're going through births, deaths, sickness, like, it's a lot.
We gotta get to know everything about these guys.
Divorce,
in a lot of ways, right? Divorces and.
I was a psychotherapist. I was a psychotherapist last night for about an hour with the client. Poor thing, crying to me. It's sad, but
you gotta have a lot of hats, for doing, and I'm sure because you guys have, again, trying to look at the business as a whole, you have to know every kind of nook and cranny of it to see what the value is, to be able to get them the best deal, as possible. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be a lot. It's not like selling a house. I'm sure that, it's, and what kind of, as far as like buyers go, is there a trend in the type of buyer? Is it more automotive type buyers? Are they younger guys or people that have been in the industry a long time, people outside of the industry, or is it just sort of random, I think it's a combination of both. Speaking to the Harley side, a lot of existing dealers, again, looking at the surrounding dealers and, either picking it up as an additional point for, so they have multiple rooftops, which we know is advantageous and where the motor company kind of wants it to go. And it's a bit tougher to get buyers that aren't an existing Harley-Davidson dealer, Powersports dealer, and automotive dealer with the experience. Are not going to get approved. So it definitely makes it a bit more challenging for anybody to come outside and get in there. On the Metric side, I think we're going to start seeing maybe some more Harley dealers diversifying into Metric. Seeing a little bit of this, which I never thought I would see that. It's like, what? It's only a Harley dealer. So that's an interesting point there? You think that's going to be more common going down the road? Like,
I'm seeing more dealers warming up to it. Let's put it that way. Not necessarily, I mean, maybe we'll see some additional franchises added under a rooftop just because of seasonality.
or like
But I
different
think-
sectors like UTV, I see some like, oh, we've got some side-by-sides, but we also do Harley, which they don't necessarily compete on each other.
Right.
I don't
And
know.
again, going back to the size of these dealerships, when you have 40,000 square feet,
Yeah. And it's, the size of those dealerships. Hey, you could fit, 11 or 12 lines in there probably, but they've got them full of motor clothes and boots and, things like that. But, again, to make those Taj Mahals work, I think they'll have to get creative.
Yeah. On the
forward.
metric side, I think we're still seeing enthusiast type buyers and some automotive buyers. Again, automotive, I think they've become a little bit more conservative, and it's really got to, no broken stores, and it's got to fit in their footprint.
Okay.
So in metrics, just, somewhat easier to get approved if you're not an existing dealer, because you're not held to any like KPI standards where,
Right.
Existing metric dealers have to be meeting those metrics in order to get approved. So, that's become a struggle.
Yeah.
Again, it just goes
But an
back to being a
automotive
perfect
dealer-
storm.
Don't you think an automotive dealer has a little bit of a leg up because they've already probably been approved for a line? Like they probably look at it like these guys kind of know how that dealership system works and how to run it. So they might have a little more of an, which, whether or not
They
it makes
do, but the OEMs are still looking at their CSI. So they still, they would still have to submit that in as part of their package. But, again, the automotive dealers aren't hurting as bad as, our Powersports, because it's the want versus the need, right?
Right. I mean, I think automotive still has tons of problems. I mean, honestly, the car, but it's like you said, it's a need. They're gonna sell, and then a lot of those guys, they make their money on the service end of it, which I think we are seeing more. But it's like we were talking earlier, we're having a hard time with keeping techs around, and some of these guys that are retiring that have been master techs for 30 years, and they're like, all right, I'm out, and it's hard to replace those guys. So a lot of service departments, I think, could do better, but they don't have the staff and the ability to organize to get more jobs in at this point.
I think there's still too some pushback and some people that are not as excited to have the private equity groups, come in and do what they do. They feel like they've kind of killed the culture somewhat.
Oh yeah, no, I get that. I they are different. It's different. Actually, I'm got an article coming out this issue about what powersports dealers can learn from car dealers.
I've been preaching that for years. The synergies,
but not necessarily the differences are. I think the car dealers are much more pragmatic. They're much more business like, okay, we've got our processes, we do it this way, anybody can come in and plug them in here, and we do it this way. Whereas Powersports are much more enthusiastic, like, hey, I really like to ride, and they're not quite as dialed in on some of those processes that I think that the car dealers are.
Well, I think the biggest difference is that in the automotive, it's more transactional. Where in Powersports and Harley Davidson, it is still about a relationship and being involved in the community and, providing that, touch. So I would much rather go in and buy a motorcycle than a car, even though I'm in both the businesses. When I go into a car dealership, I still get a little uncomfortable. I go straight to the bathroom and then I come on. But I have friends now in the industry that take care of me. But my point is, you still can't lose that. And some of the bigger consolidators in the motorcycle industry, need to understand it is about relationships and building a long-term relationship, because you want them to come back to you as opposed to going down the street. Where in the car business, you can go from Tampa to Orlando to get a Ford or, Toyota if you wanted to. There's no loyalty anymore. That is the hard part,
They
loyalty.
shop around a lot more. And I do think that motorcycle, that there are some shopping around on the power sports side, but for the most part, you're not necessarily getting that much of a bet. The deals aren't that much different. Whereas I think car dealers can, lure you in with some of these crazy rebates and things like that, to try to steal that part of the market share from somebody else, whereas in power sports, it's like, it's rare to get somebody like, I'm going 5 states away to pick up this motorcycle, it happens, but not as much.
I'm not coming to Ohio, okay?
No, you don't want to come here now, man. Well, it's all humid and
here too. But look, I think we'll end up the year with good amount of buy sells closing. It's just the first quarter was a little scary, and then the stock market took a huge hit, and new administration, and I think things are somewhat stabilizing a little bit more, I guess.
I think people are getting used to the idea that tariffs are, maybe they're on, maybe they're off. We don't know. Let's wait and see, push it down the road. It's like a negotiation thing. And, it's not as scary as it was when it first happened. You're like, oh my God, 100, how much tariffs is that going to be? What's that going to, now it's like, all right, well, let's just see where this actually lands here first beforehand. But,
and again, that factors into buyers sitting on the sidelines, not making those moves as fast as they would, because how do you build a pro forma on an unknown of these, crazy news headlines?
If aluminum is taxed at, even American manufacturers are like, well, I still need aluminum. I got to pay 50% tariff on that. And so, there's still some issues to iron out, I think, but, hopefully we get to some kind of normalcy and consensus here by the end of the year. And, and then, hey, if we all had a lot more money in our pocket, maybe it wouldn't be such a big deal. But, right now I'm still waiting for that, rebate check to come in. But yeah, we'll, again, it's like a matter of, the power sport, the market's still here. It's just a matter of trying to ride out the bumps, and the guys that can do that the best now, and I think there's still some good, diamonds in the rough out there that are probably like, hey, I'm done, I want out, and they were running a good business, and maybe it just sort of, they lost interest in it, and I think those are still out there for people.
It's funny you say it, because we're working on an opportunity just like that right now. So I think if you believe in motorcycling, power sports industry, the business continuing, it's a great time to be a buyer too, because there's a lot of value opportunities. So if you have cash and can it get approved or get financing through HDFS or your existing lender, it's a good time to buy some very quality assets. So anybody listening in, anybody listening, it's, we'd love to help you, because now is a great opportunity to acquire stores at a discount.
And I think you'd be picking yourself, if you're in it, like you said, if you're in it for the long haul, you got to look at things well, it's not going to stay like this forever. So my opportunity to get into something isn't going to that window's going to narrow up, and you're going to then pay, just like people say, man, I should have bought Bitcoin when it was $1,000, well, you didn't, now it's 100,000,
All right, don't bring that up, man. Don't bring that up.
Sore subject. Sorry.
But I think, look, we're excited. We're here to offer help. We give a lot of free advice. to families, to dealers, buyers and sellers. And, we've learned to just be totally transparent and candid. It's hard sometimes because, we want to help. And, I've never seen so many sellers in 25 years.
Yeah.
He makes me be the bad guy. I'm the heartbreaker.
Yeah, I'm too nice. She's tough, man. That's another subject. Yeah, she's tough. I wouldn't mess with her.
No.
She scares me.
Well, you got to have somebody who's got to be. You got to be the good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, we appreciate.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Opportunity we're here. We love supporting Powersports business. It's our, favorite place to market and advertise, and been with you guys a long time. So thank you very much. So thank you.
Well, we're I know you guys got a busy show schedule, so I know we'll see you down the road somewhere. Hopefully, at our
We'll see you in our territory this year. You're in Florida for Accelerate.
You guys, we want you guys to speak at our show again. I've got Morgan Stanley's is going to be, so I was just talking to them the other day. So we would love to have you guys again, and and we're going to be in your neck of the woods. So, that'll be fun. I mean,
nice.
I like being down in Orlando in January, come on. That's a no brainer to me. Although I thought Charlotte would have been, I was like, oh, Charlotte, that's going to be warm. Well, who knew there would be like all that snow and freezing? That was a little bit rough. Like, I get that in Ohio. I don't need to go. I want to go somewhere warm. So
no, I'm glad. Well, thank you guys. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Brendan.
If you like this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. We also invite you to connect with us on powersportsbusiness.com.